Miss Bernice, please state your name for me and your home address and your age, please.
Bernice Thompson, 1310 Cedar Park Road, Annapolis, 21401 and 90.
Amen. And what year were you born?
1925.
1925. How long have you been a member of Asbury?
Since 40, I think it's 45.
1945.
I mean, an actual, I've always been, this is my home church, but I mean, when I actually joined myself, it was in 1945.
So you grew up in this church?
Oh, yes, Lord.
So tell me a little bit about that. What was it like growing up as a youngster in
girl,
Asbury?
Oh, my sweetie. It was just wonderful. I mean, when you crossed that front threshold, the reverence just came over you. And with the painting that was over the pulpit, the organ pipes back there, it was, you just had a feeling of, it was just wonderful. That's all I can say. And the Spirit was with you, and it stayed with you. When you left here on Sunday morning, honey, you felt like singing, and it stayed with you all the week. It was just like, I can't explain it, but that's how it was. I guess that's why now it's so different from, for me.
Yeah.
But it was just awesome. It really was. And the thing that I liked was the reverence. When I'm sitting in church, I hope I don't look like a mean old lady that knows everything. That's not it. It's just that I have that reverence, that quietness when I'm in church. Don't ask me anything else.
So, as a young person, who were some of the influential older members?
All of them.
Yeah.
Because back then, everybody, any older person, if you had a problem, you could talk to, you felt good. Not to mention, of course, your own relatives and things like that. But if you had a problem, you could just, sometimes you wouldn't even have to ask. Somebody would say, how you doing today? You sure you all right? And you knew that they were doing this out of interest, not to be, that's, now I can understand why God used to wonder why God didn't leave somebody from the older generation to be here. Now I know, because they wouldn't be able to cope with the way things are now, because much as I can do to cope with it. But that's how it was with me. It was really just...
It's different.
Yes, Lord.
But one good thing about that, Ms. Bernice, is that we're thankful that we have members like you who've been here, because we need to have those persons who know what it's like and knew what it was like to keep us moving forward, So we thank God for you. And, I know that as times have changed, I asked someone someone else this question about technology, because technology has really been something that has moved forward, and it sort of sometimes feels like the elders are being left behind. But, it's not standing still for us, unfortunately.
That's for sure.
But how has that impacted your life with the technology?
Like I say, change is good in a way. For me, change was not all that good. And that's why I can understand why God don't leave two generations, more or less, because, we realize change has come about. And so that's it. It's not always the way we want it, but, it's nothing we can do about it. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's there, and we just have to deal with it. I personally don't do too well with it, because I don't have internet all this stuff. That's foreign to me.
Yeah.
I don't have any email addresses. I don't know anything but Facebooks and all that. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, it has really,
Yeah.
you know. But
It is difficult for those of us who haven't grown up with it. Like my grandchildren have grown up with that. That's all they know. They don't know what it's like to not have Facebook or have the internet or have Twitter, or they know my 3-year-old can get on my phone and she can
tell me about
go
it.
to whatever app she needs to go to, and she's 3 years old. But and so that's interesting. Tell me about, is there any particular pastor that sticks out in your mind here that's influenced your life?
That too is not, because I have never had any problems with any pastor that we've had. I've always, you know, enjoyed them. Back in the day with Reverend Briggs and Reverend Johnson, and even a little bit with Reverend Perkins, because I was very young with Reverend Perkins. And it would be nothing to have the minister at your house on Sunday after church for, you know, for dinner and things like this. And I mean, when he was there, it was, I mean, the respect that, I mean, everything now is just different, you know, but I never had any problems.
Yeah.
And as far as I can go back, my parents never had any things like that with the ministers.
Yeah, it seems like that's something that we've gotten away from. I remember growing up too in the AME church with my grandparents, and very often we would have the pastor at my grandmother's house for dinner. That's something that we've gotten away from, but it was a good time because you got to learn, and like you said, as a child, you learned some good principles from being in the presence of the pastor and how to conduct yourself and those sort of things. So, did you live in the community when you joined Asbury? Did you live in the community?
This is my home. I lived on Shaw Street for 13 years. And then for about 5 years, we moved in Larkin Street because Daddy could no longer go up and down steps. And back in that time, if you know it, housing, we didn't have the privilege of going certain places.
Yes.
We only had certain areas. So we moved in Larkin Street. Of course, Mama regretted it 10 minutes after she got up there, almost. But then, and in 43, yeah, she passed. And I went down the lower part of Larkin Street with my mother until I moved in Pleasant Court. And that was in, how old is my oldest son? My daughter is 70. I'm 90, she's 70. Uh, 70, how old would Ronnie have been? Well, anyway, he was born in 45. Let's put it that way.
Tell me,
Yes.
how many members were in the church? Did you remember the membership and what?
Not
Yeah.
really in number-wise,
Yeah.
but we had a good fellowship. We had
Yeah.
a good congregation.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have empty pews.
Yeah.
And we had 3 services on Sundays.
Wow.
And then eventually it got so that we only, had 2. And then eventually we just had the 1, because the 3 o'clock service, except for camp meetings for Women and Men's Day, we didn't have that much of a turnout. So we would just have the 11 and the 8 o'clock. And then when things begin to get a little askew, out there, they sort of deleted that 8 o'clock service because it wasn't exactly,
well attended.
And it was just not, too, but nowhere near the things you go through now coming out at night. But they just felt that, it's
To
just
have
better.
people
Yeah.
out. Yeah. So, how do you think Asbury, what influence has Asbury had on the community, this community that we're in?
You know, the church, period, back then, just seemed to have, even though they're more involved now in the community, it just seemed like back there you had more influence. I don't, in other words, what I'm saying, back then, Christians, as we were referred to, and members of Asbury, people had more respect. So it made a difference. It made a big difference. And you just, if you were doing something that you wasn't, when a member from the church, someone would come by, as Sister Bessie can say, they turn this, watch out to see him or her. They had. So to me, that was more of an impact then. And I do believe in prayer. And we had one communion's daughters, Miss Louise Brown, and somebody said to her one day about going home, and she said, "Dear child, I'm not afraid." And she didn't have to be. The taxi stand was over there, and I mean, those drivers, they would respect you when you got down on the corner of Washington and Clay, that corner down on Brown's. It was always a group, standing around there. But they had respect for church people and things like that. So to me, that had more of an impact than what's now.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
But that's just me. I guess I'm still back there.
Do you remember the transition from the old sanctuary to the new?
Yes, Lord.
Tell me a little bit about that.
And it's, I probably should, but that's how I feel. I do not have the same feeling here as I had there. It's just, but see, that's, there's just some things that's ingrained, and no matter what changes, you don't change with it. And I guess that's me.
Yeah.
And that,
Do you think it's because it's larger? It doesn't seem as intimate, or what would you think? What's your feeling about that?
I don't think it has the intimacy that the old church had. After Sunday service, sometimes out there, 10, 15 minutes, the fellowship was still
going on.
You'd be standing there. Even the police finally decided they was out there a couple of times to try to keep the traffic so we would cross the street. And we would just, be chatting and stuff like that. So until finally, I guess they just decided to get across the street, the best they can. But that's just how it was. It was a closeness. And we all lived sort of together, so it wasn't like you only saw somebody once a week or something like this. You were always running into each other at the stores and just Safeway and all of those. It was just, plus, you belonged to the same organization. So you saw people
all the time.
Where now, sometimes the only time you see them is at church, But it was still just a closeness. People was just...
Do you think that's because a lot of the folk who came to Asbury lived in the community, and so because they lived in the community, they were able, so you worshiped together, you lived together basically in the same community, so you shopped in the same area, so that may be, and now that people are all over the place and coming from Arnold and Parole and other places into the church, that may be the reason why.
Well, possibly, because here, right in the main area, But I said Maine, I mean right here in the Fourth Ward, more or less. But we had members still that they lived in Spa Road, like they are now, Smithville Street out there, and downtown, you know, and all that. You know, they came to Asbury. You know, we had some members that came in from parole.
Yeah.
Not everybody in parole went to Mount Olive or Cecil, you know. So it was just a
Different.
closeness.
Yeah.
It really and truly.
What would you want people to know about Asbury years down the road? What would you want them to know about this church?
The only thing that I can say, Rhonda, is that I wish everybody could be as knowledgeable and as connected with the old Asbury as I was. That's the church, you know, I just...
How do we get back there, Miss Bernice?
How would we get back?
How would we get back to that?
Sweetie, I don't know. It just seemed like now, you know, man has no respect for the law. They don't have any respect for God's law or man's law. Everybody now just do whatever they want to do. And if you like it, fine. If you don't, so what? And I, you know, when you get to that point, it's hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Tell me something good about Asbury, a good memory you have.
Oh,
I know you have lots of them.
Oh, honey, yes.
Tell me something good about Asbury.
It
A
was
good
just,
memory.
it was just wonderful. And I think it was one of the most beautiful churches. Our oak columns and the pews, the stained glass window, the painting over the pulpit, the walls were sort of eggshelly, and then around almost like a border, and a real pale, like it was just.
That sounds beautiful.
It was really just beautiful. When my daughter got married here, Carlton Morris, the florist, he said, "Oh boy," he says, "I've always wanted to do that church," because he did our flowers.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
You know, it was just, I don't know. Like I said, I guess it's just been, you know, here. And on Tuesday nights, they had class. My aunt's two husbands, Arthur Wells and Mose Wells, they were brothers and they were class leaders. And they would have class on Tuesday nights in the old sanctuary in the back part of the, you know, you go through those two back there where the kitchen was when they had camp meetings, and it was just...
Talk about the class leaders, because that's something that I don't know where we are with that too much with the new, but I remember my grandmother was a class leader, and it was a lot different than what I know of as class leadership now. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about class leadership.
I mean, you know, and like I said, they would come in, Mose and Arthur, they were brothers, and they would have to do the fire, that old stove that was down there, they had to do the fire there, you know, so it would be warm, and you sit back there. Of course, I was just a child, but I was there because I had to.
Right.
Church was a part of you. There was just no...
You didn't have a choice.
No.
Your parents said yes.
And sometimes when they would get ready to do their testimony, sometimes they would sing a verse of a hymn. I mean, you could just feel all of...
Yeah.
It
sounds like it was spirit-filled.
Oh, Lord, yes. Yes. Because even as children, because first place, you were taught to respect and have reverence for the church. You didn't come into church acting like you was anywhere else but church. So it couldn't help but be spirit-filled.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
you knew that God wasn't sitting over there, but you also had the feeling that whatever we were doing here, God sees it. You know,
Yeah.
so and then people didn't allow children to forget it, Bernice. We step on somebody's toes, but they didn't allow children to run all through the church and stuff. And my mother or your mother, or my grandma could get after your child, just like you.
Yes, ma'am.
They walk in here and you're not, and the kids respected it.
Yes, ma'am. I remember that.
They
I remember
believed
that.
it. And all of that, it couldn't be anything else but spirit-filled.
Yeah.
You know, you have, you have something now. You don't have nothing to just.
Tell me an interesting fact about Asbury. Like, one of the things that I've heard is that we're called the Mother Church. So, is there something interesting, an interesting fact that we should know about Asbury?
I really don't know much about that, but I do know that Asbury was a respected church. It
Yeah.
was a respected church in the community. It and people that belonged or went to Asbury, you were just people of respect. They just had,
Respectfully. Yeah.
I don't know. Don't get me started.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So tell me what you would want. I asked you that question about what you would want people to know about Asbury, but can you just finish this question, this sentence for me? And it's what I know for sure. What is it that you know for sure, Miss Bernice?
I think we were all on the right road. I think we were all going down that right path. And I don't mean that there weren't people that weren't, but you were on the right track because there was always somebody there that could sort of
Bring you back.
bring you back. And because you had respect for them and you believed, it was just like there was a spiritual connection to God. That's all I can say. You just like I said, when you cross those big wide doors and cross that threshold, you were in a totally different. And I don't mean you were falling out, and doing all these kind of things or acting like a religious fanatic. I don't mean it, because it was not. That's not the way it was. It was just the feeling and the respect and the fellowship and that went along. And I mean, and they. Well, anyway.
So tell me, lastly, what it is you'd like us to know. Share some wisdom with us and those who might listen and hear your interview today. What words of wisdom that you can share that you live this Christian life as long as you've lived, and what can you share with us who are younger and who are coming along and who are aspiring to live that life also?
Well, I feel like this. You don't have to be in church every Sunday, although I was. You don't have to be acting like a religious fanatic and all of that. But I do feel that there should be some sort of spiritual feeling and mutual respect or something that gives you a base or something to go on. And I just think we've just lost all of that. Everybody just do what they want to do now. And I just think that's
Well,
the
we
wrong
pray
road.
that God will show us the direction and as we have elders in the church like you and others who can just keep us going and moving in the right direction and sharing your wisdom. And don't be afraid to do that, because that's why God gave it to you. That's why you're here so long. You need
Well,
to
see,
share that with
sometimes
us.
I wonder about that. I
Yeah.
says, God must have me here for a reason, but I don't know what, because I can't see myself being a role model or anything like this, But, because I guess I'm doing something right.
There
I don't
you
know
are.
what it is.
You are.
But I'm not aspiring to be a role model or anything
Mm-hmm.
like this. I just want to live and you live, and we
Mm-hmm.
just,
We're just going to love God
oh,
and continue
Lord,
to
yes.
love one another. And
Always pray, always make God, if it's you and your husband, always make God the third party
Yes,
in
ma'am.
that relationship.
Yes,
If it's
ma'am.
just you, make God that second party in
Yes,
that
ma'am.
relationship. Because believe me, and take it from me, there is power in prayer, and God does understand. He sees us, and He will answer prayer.
Yes.
It's not always the answer you want. And take this from an old lady, because but He is there. He will give you what you need when you need it.
Amen.
And that I can bank on. Believe me that I believe in the power of prayer.
Me too.
I just wish, though, that I could pray like Mom and Daddy did. And Daddy, when he prayed, his voice would ring like a bell. And we had Sunday morning prayer every Sunday. And then he would say sometimes, "Take it, dear." Then Mama would take it over.
Yeah.
And it was, because I was raised by my grandparents.
Yeah.
Because my mother was a little young when I was born. And like I say, had it not been for God, and He keeps me here, He has kept me for a reason, because I was, I guess, about 3 days old or so. And my grandmother said, because that's who I call Mama, but that was she said, they were in the bed, and she kept hearing something like, and she said, wait a minute. She got up, went down the hall, came to my mother's, and she said my mother's breast had fallen over my nose. If she had not been there, I would have been right back where I came from. So from that day, right, God has been with me,
Yes,
for
ma'am.
so it's no way that I can feel any other way. And I'm over there by myself, and nobody would believe. When my husband died, I would never have believed that I could survive. Because, honey, I didn't even know how to take care of myself. My parents, then my husband. And when he took my husband, then less than 2 years later, he came back and I had 3 children.
Yeah. But God.
15, 16, and 10. That's left for me and I didn't even know how to do me. So, honey, child, I have so much to be grateful and thankful. Oh, Lord, I don't know how anybody could.
We don't know how we live without Him, do we? No,
I don't know how anybody could, not know God. You have to understand something, but like in this day and time, it's like everything is man, science. So they don't give God credit for nothing.
Nope.
And
But those of us who know Him, we have to.
Tell me.
We have to.
Tell me. And like I say, I just don't. I don't want to be. I need to get off my soapbox now.
Well, we thank you, Miss Bernice, for sharing with us today. Thank you for coming out. I know sometimes it's a little hard to get moving and get going, but we thank God for you. I want you to keep on keeping on. Keep on sharing your wisdom and your love. It's always great to look over and see you there on Sunday morning. So I thank God for you. Thanks for coming.
Okay, sweetie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.